inside your application, right? Say connections. So moving on to the next slide, right? So IBM is the leader with open standards in social business, right? So if you've seen, how Google is allowing developers to write gadgets, or Facebook is allowing people to write Facebook apps. They all follow open standards, right? But they follow in the public domain. Now, if you talk about enterprise, so enterprise spreads across your employees, your partners, your channel partners, your customers, your dealers, your vendors, your suppliers. So it's not just your employees within the enterprise. And some organizations, while they are okay to use Facebook as a social collaboration tool, some employees are some employers are not very open on using Facebook or Google as a social platform, right? So you can't expose, their apprehensions or their policies where enterprise allow people to use free tools. But over the period of time, when the intellectual capital or IP rights or the knowledge management requirement keeps up, those matters cannot be discussed on Facebook. People they find not so secure, right? So IBM also started looking into that direction, where there were issues in terms of integration, bringing applications, social data, your day-to-day activities together on a single platform, right? So we started making the platform itself more agile, more flexible for you to integrate your applications. So over the period of time, we have added support for HTML5, SAML, activity streams. So activity streams and Open Social and Open Ajax and CMIS. These are the standards which are coming up, and which helps you as a developer write programs which can integrate with other applications. So if you talk about CMIS standard, CMIS is for content management interoperability. Now there are so many content management systems in place. There are frequent requirements where one CMS has to integrate with other CMS. Old ways, you can use some file system, share it, use point-to-point APIs. Now, if you change one backend, one CMS with replace with another one, it is again very difficult to write the integration, right? So CMIS started coming up with a lot of systems like Frisco or IBM FileNet started adopting CMIS standard for interoperability. SharePoint also provides CMIS standard capabilities in terms of APIs. So similarly, IBM Connections also adopted the CMIS standard, so the file repository can be exposed as CMIS repository. Activity streams is another standard which is coming up, so that you can consume external application data into your application, and you can produce data which can be consumed by other applications, right? So these are the standards. Internally they use JSON format or Atom format REST feeds, REST APIs. Open Social standard is another standard which is coming up to integrate your applications. Now, if you talk about say widgets is a very loose concept. Everybody talks about their own standards of widgets, or if you talk about portlets, or if you talk about JT applications, .NET applications, there is no standard. So interoperability is a challenge, because the way you write, say for example, JT applications itself is different. You adopt different frameworks. So again, interoperability is through Java APIs. Now we talk about web service. The web service also becomes challenge, because web service provides only data. Now what about the UI, right? So Open Social standards are coming up where you can consume the UI, you can consume the data together, the application, right? So you don't need to rewrite the UI, or you don't need to migrate the application to one platform, right? So you can have heterogeneous platform as long as your application follows Open Social standards and able to provide the required interfaces, so that you can have the embedded view. If you talk about Google search, right? If you do a Google search, you mouse over the search results, and then you see a small, flyout coming on the right hand side, which shows the search result summary. That's embedded experience for you, right? So that's what IBM is doing in terms of social business application development. So you can have applications which are embedded in your application itself, right? And now these gadgets or these widgets are across the platforms. So whether you access in the smartphone, whether you access on tablets or kiosk or desktop, or your mail client, whether it's an Outlook, or notes client, you should be able to access the same code everywhere, right? So the open social container is the standard which is coming up. As long as all these applications which I talked about, they follow the same standard, right? So you should be able to embed your application in any container which follows open source standard. Open Ajax is another alliance where IBM is investing a lot of money, because when you talk about Ajax, a lot of concerns are there on the security, interoperability on Ajax calls, the format, message flow. So Open Ajax is an alliance where IBM is also a member, which we standardize the interfaces and the techniques to make the Ajax containers or Ajax calls more secure. It's more towards security or mashup. Okay, so Open Social API, and many applications they call gadgets. So IBM has a leadership role, including so we are on the board of directors, committers on Apache Shindig. We have also instrumented in Open Social 2.0 standard. Historically, on the portal domain, we had chaired the committee on JSR 168 and 286 portal standard. So IBM Architect was the chairperson. Similarly, if you talk about IBM Forms or X Forms, so IBM again, IBM Distinguished Engineer was the chairperson of the committee managing the whole infrastructure, right? So IBM has been there in the market in terms of a standard, governance, and that is why you see a lot of times we are not so. Historically we are not so agile, because we wanted to bring out a product which is more standard compliant, rather than just for the sake of releasing a release or making a product, make the product. So we excel in integration, and that is what the commitment what we are showing, right? We had been using Open Social Standard internally to some extent. So the standard what you see is also to some extent influenced by what we have been doing internally. For example, there is a standard coming up for search engine optimization. So we talk about seed list format. Simple fact, the way Yahoo searches, the way Google searches, they use different formats for indexing. There is no standard way for your website to provide a standard format for the search crawlers to be able to search and index properly, right? So IBM is also coming up with something called seed list format, which is nothing but a atom based format for your search data, what you want to expose to the search engines. So Open Social committee has a lot of other vendors like SAP, Jive. Lotus Life is an IBM offering. So we have our social offering on the cloud, which is called Smart Cloud Social or Lotus Life. Google follows that, Yahoo follows that, MySpace, LifeRay, Oracle. There are so many other vendors. They started driving into the Open Social Standard because everybody understands the integration cannot be point to point. So it has to be cross applications. So SAP used to be very, very close, or Oracle used to be very, very close in terms of ERP. Now they are trying to adopt to the open standards like say SAML or OpenID authentication for having better single sign-on across the applications. Activity streams. So activity streams is mostly used for consuming the events or producing the event, right? So for example, a use case could be you write something on say your social networking tool, and then somebody deletes it, right? So what happened? What is the proof? I mean, that you had actually made a comment against somebody, right? So that's where the event framework comes, right? So whatever you do on your social channel, you should be able to audit it, right? So now there has to be a standard to capture the events, right? Similarly, there has to be a standard to consume the events, right? So activity stream is one of the standard where vendors will have technology which can be plugged and play. For example, I can have a social tool, and then I can have an audit management tool or compliance tool to capture what is going on in the because if you look at historically, email when came, people were still not taking email as a official channel or official communication. Now, over the period of time, email has become social, accepted or worldwide accepted standard for official communication. Similarly, what IBM perceives, or what we are looking into right now, the social networking tools have started becoming voice of consumers, voice of the customers, right? So definitely yes, on a public domain, a lot of governance is required. It's very it's challenging to control what goes on a public domain, but within enterprise, whether it's a B2C or a B2B, it is still kind of controlled. So there are tools and techniques to have some governance across the social channels, right? So with proper auditing, proper moderation, things can be controlled, right? And that's what. But having those capability requires some kind of standardization, right? So you can buy a social tool from X vendor, and then whether it has auditing capability, whether moderation capability, that's the question thing, right? Now, can you have somebody else audit the data, right? So that's where the open standard comes. So a single tool may not provide all the features and capability, but the tool should be capable enough to have insertion points or injection points so that other tools can also plug into that. And then when you have plug and play architecture, that's where the extending the software itself becomes much more easier. And that's what IBM try to do things right in the first place. And that may result in we are becoming a little slower in terms of the product release, but we try to make sure that what we do is right. So that is where, if you see, the products are having their life cycle up to, say, for same 12 years, we have the same product. So we are not, it's not that we have 20 different products and then we are positioning different products to different customers on needs, right? It's the same product which is flexible enough to adopt and then be able to add new standards. So open authentication, OAuth, right? So this is again a very much evolving standard, and we are also working towards making most of the IBM software compatible to OAuth or OpenID based authentication. So SAML. So we have a smart cloud offering from Lotus Life, so that adheres to OAuth filtration. So you can have single sign-on with your application. So partners, IBM partners or ISVs, vendors can develop solutions which can be integrated with IBM cloud offering, right? Similarly, if you have in-premise deployment should be able to authenticate using SAML providers, right? So we are working towards making our software compliant to the some of the emerging standards, right? So coming to the slide 9, social business. So this is the embedded experience I was talking about, right? So now what you see here is activity stream. Activity stream is a standard now, right? So you may be on your enterprise social tool, but suppose you want to raise a leave request, or you are a manager, right? So your employee raises a leave request. That request goes to your mailbox, and then mailbox, the email alert comes, and then you open the mailbox. If there is a link, you click the link. Otherwise, you log into your HRMS data or leave management system. Then you approve or reject the leave. It's a long cycle. I mean, productivity-wise, it may take some time, right? So what if you have a facility where you are having your dashboard or your login screen where you are seeing what is happening or what are the events coming into your dashboard, and then you can take action right there instead of going to email, checking the email, going to ERP application, log in there, then taking action. Everything can be brought together in a single place, right? So it could be your mailbox, it could be your mail client where you have embedded experience, It could be your social platform, where there you have embedded experience. It could be your application, right? It's not even IBM application. It's your application where you are getting embedded experience, right? So you have the same experience across the technology, and that is where the innovation lies, right? So organizations are trying to consolidate applications. Organizations are trying to figure out how to consolidate the UI. Organizations are trying to figure out how to do single sign-on problems, how to solve single sign-on problems. There are too many applications in large enterprises over the period of time, which are homegrown or custom built. At some point of time, people have to take decision. What are the UI standards within enterprise? What are the integration standards within enterprise? Right? What are the single sign-on standard within enterprise? So these questions, they keep coming, and the same debate starts, right? So whether should we go with single vendor, whether should we have multi-vendor scenario? If you have multi-vendor scenario, then interoperability may be a challenge. Whether this works with this or that works with that, nobody knows. So that's where what we are pushing towards is having a standard-based APIs. It could be event system, right? So activity stream is one of the step forward towards the direction where we want to have a common integration scenario, right? Then the next thing what we are striving for is unified APIs. So we call it social business toolkit. Now, when you say social business toolkit, the applications can be deployed in multiple locations, right? So you have multi-location deployment or multi-environment deployment. It could be on a cloud, it could be in-premise, it could be hybrid, right? It could be on a public domain, right? Like we have Live, we have IBM.com, we have DeveloperWorks, we have Greenhouse. So there are multiple deployment of IBM social business applications. Now, can you integrate these applications? Can you consume the data? Can you feed in the data? Yes, it is possible because the APIs are common, right? So we don't have multiple APIs for different deployments. So social business APIs, which are standard driven, will allow you to consume and produce feeds or events which can be consumed by other applications, or IBM social business application will be able to consume your application, again depending on the standard format, standard feeds provided by your application, right? So activity streams, embedded experience, and shared box. These three things are standard which are coming up. So if you look at this flowchart, so here we talk about an aggregation platform, right? So social business or IBM Connections is a platform which aggregates the events from different channels. So, a small example, a lot of marketing firms, right, or CMO offices, they have their enterprise presence on, say, Facebook or Twitter, right? So they have people to manage those channels. So Facebook, somebody manages Facebook page, somebody manages Twitter feeds. They do the sentiment analysis. Now, sentiment analysis, somebody does manual, there are specialized tools to do the sentiment analysis, looking at what is positive, what is negative, and how the trending is happening. Then the problem comes, right? The data is too much. Now, what is good, what is bad? So there are tools which can do that also. But how will you do after that, right? So if your brand is not doing good on social, right? So your sentiment is negative. How are you going to fix it? So then the need to have internal collaboration based on the data which is there on the public domain comes. So the challenge is, how will you take action? If every hour you are monitoring your social channel, right? How are you going to monitor on a real time and take action? So within 2 hours, within 3 hours, your response should go against what is going negative, right? For example, you launch a new product and you solicit the feedback on Facebook, right? And the trend is negative, right? Or something is not going right. You want to take that, you want to control that, right? So you want to take action. But if you have everything manual, it is very difficult. So you want to have an ability to get the real-time feed, and then internally you collaborate, right, and come up with an answer, and then publish it, right, on the social platform as a response, which is choreographed, right. So that's where if you look at this flow chart, in summary, it is that, right? So your data is coming from different channels. It could be your SAP, it could be SharePoint, it could be LinkedIn, it could be XYZ, any social application, right? Each of the applications, they generate events or feeds. You capture the feeds, you do the aggregation, do the analytics, and get the meaningful data out and post onto the activity stream, right? And then people can start discussions around the data, or they can start activities so that somebody can take action, right? So then your internal collaboration. So we call it social bridge, right? So here, if you look at the application services sample JSON format, right? So embedded application is sending the JSON format to the container, and based on that data, the UI is built, right? So using the open social container or open social gadget containers. Yeah. So on slide 13, this is what we call social bridging, right? So what is happening on your external or public facing sites? You get the data and then you collaborate internally. So you don't take your internal matter onto the public forum and then discuss, right? So you get your external data inside and discuss internally, and then you come up with a reply or response, right? So that is where we call it social bridging. So you can, if you have internal community for say marketing or sales or development or the product development, right? So you can be inside, right? So you don't need to be looking at Facebook or Twitter what is happening, but you can see what is happening in Twitter or Facebook, and then take the action internally, right? So you become more agile in terms of integrated experience. So rather than you go to Facebook and Twitter and then seeing what is happening and take decision there itself, right? So you can have a well-informed decision by getting the data from or maybe filter data, right? So out of 100 comments, maybe 20 are more constructive, whether they are negative or positive, but the rest it is mostly junk. There are tools to filter it out based on the rules, but on those 20 itself, you need to take action, and that's where an integrated platform like IBM Connections or social business platform comes very handy, right? So this is what I was talking. The gadget, the same gadget, you have different context. Whether you are part of the Lotus Notes like mail, or whether you access through gadget, the same gadget through tablet, or whether it's a smartphone, or whether it's a desktop, or your own application, right? So the gadget could be getting the data from CRM or HR or customer support or document management, workflow, rich media. It could be anything, right? As long as those applications follow the open social standard. Yeah. So coming to open APIs on slide 16. So if you look at the connections framework, these applications are built on a gateway stack, right? And then the APIs, they follow the REST APIs. So pretty much what you can do on the UI, you can very much do using the APIs. So it's not just a closed platform where you can just use it as is, right? So you can change the UI, you can change the way things work in connections, you can control it, you can monitor it, you can audit it, you can take actions, right? So everything is possible in connections. The data is pretty much standard-based data. What goes in, what goes out. We have seen people in India itself. There are customers who are using IBM connections in a very innovative manner. Even we won't have thought about that, right? So connections APIs, or we call it part of the social business toolkit. So they are very easy. They are language independent. So whether you are a .NET expert, or whether you are a PHP expert, or Curl expert, or Python expert, or Java expert, any language, you will be able to consume the connection API, because the APIs, the data goes in as XML atom format. The data comes out is again another XML which is in the atom format. So you should be able to produce and consume the feeds. For consumer, for connections to consume or produce what you need. XPages. So XPages is another technology. People on the call, if anybody is having experience on notes scripting and notes application development, XPages is pretty much similar to what JSF provides. It's a component-driven architecture for notes developer. You can write applications in XPages which are also compatible to a smartphone. So classic notes applications, the UI doesn't look that great, and then you can't really access on the smartphone, right? Because you need Lotus Notes client to access the application, and web UI is not that great, right? So XPages adds value in terms of bringing the great UI to a Notes-based application. So you can, if you are still running on old Lotus Notes application, you should look at XPages as a platform. So XPages and connections. So again, there's a good integration out of the box. There are a lot of widgets available to consume connection data into XPages applications.